Praise be to God, children. Good morning. Today we are moving on to the third part of our fourth chapter. So, what was the name of our chapter? It was the Fathers of the Church and Protectors of Faith, right? So, in the previous class, you learned about some of the Fathers of the Church, such as Saint Ignatius of Antioch, then about Saint Cyprian, Saint Athanasius, Saint Ephraim, Saint Basil, etc. Right? Now we are going to study about the classification of church fathers. So before that, let's see about the features of church fathers. Who are known to be the church fathers? The church fathers taught true and correct faith. Then they led holy life. They were recognized by the church. They lived in ancient time. See, now we call them as our priest. Right, we have a parish priest and other priest. But here we are talking about the ancient time. During that time, we didn't have so much of well-developed seminaries, or we didn't have such kind of priesthood. So what we had is of church fathers, and we can recognize them by their holy life. The things that they taught were true and correct faith, and also they lived in ancient time. The church fathers can be classified into 4 groups according to the nature of their teachings and era. So they are mainly classified on the basis of the era that they lived. Let's see the 4 types of, or the 4 groups of church fathers: Apostolic Father, Protectors of Faith, Cappadocian Father, and Fathers of the Church. So the last group, that is what you learned in the previous class, the Fathers of the Church. Now we are dealing with the other 3 church fathers. So the first one is Apostolic Father. Apostolic fathers are Christian writers who lived between 1st century and the first half of 2nd century AD. So as I already told you, it's mainly based on the era. So it is from 1st century to the first half of 2nd century. And they were Christian writers. And why are they known as the Apostolic Father? It is because they had direct contact with apostles. By looking into the time period itself, you can understand. They were present during the time of the apostles. Since they had direct contact with the apostles, they are known as the Apostolic Father. They were able to understand clearly the teachings of apostles. Half of their writings and letters are epistles. So half of their writings are as letters. Saint Polycarp, Papias of Hierapolis, Saint Bernard, Saint Ignatius of Antioch are included in the group of Apostolic Fathers. Actually, Saint Ignatius of Antioch you also learned under Fathers of the Church also, right? So this is Apostolic Father. So the main point, why are they known as Apostolic Father? Because they had direct contact with the apostles, and the second thing is that they lived between the 1st century and the first half of 2nd century. Now, the second group of church fathers, protectors of faith. The persons who took firm steps to protect the faith after the time of Apostolic Fathers are called apologists or protectors of faith. So the other name of the protectors of faith are apologists. So they comes after the era of Apostolic Fathers. They offered argument in defense of Christian faith against the challenges that rose during the 2nd century. See, there we told about the 1st century and first half of 2nd century. Now we are talking about the time after that. That is the 2nd century. They taught with the authority the Christian church and faith and doctrines. Their writings explaining the Christian faith and doctrines are also known as apology. Since they are also known as apologists, their writings are known as apology. Now, let's see the names of few protectors of faith. Saint Justin, Tertullian, Athenagoras, Saint Theophilus of Antioch are some of the important apologists in the early period. Now, from the name itself, you must understand that they are the persons who took firm stand to be with church. They were deep-rooted in faith. And they were about to protect the Christian faith. That's why they are known as protectors of faith. And they comes up after the time of Apostolic Fathers, that is during the 2nd century. Now, third group of church fathers are Cappadocian Father. Saint Basil, who fought against Arianism. You know what is Arianism? We have dealt with it. It was a false doctrine by Arius. Saint Basil, who fought against Arianism in the 4th century, his brother Saint Gregory of Nyssa and Saint Gregory of Nazianzus are known as Cappadocian Father. So who are known as the Cappadocian Fathers? Saint Gregory of Nyssa and Saint Gregory of Nazianzus. They are known by this name because they belong to Cappadocia in Asia Minor. So it's the name of the place. Since they belong to that place, they are known as Cappadocian Fathers. In the light of their teachings, the Council of Constantinople put an end to Arianism. So you learned about Council of Constantinople. So it was their teaching who led to this Council of Constantinople, and because of that, it had put an end to a false doctrine, Arianism. So that's about the classification or grouping of church fathers. And the fourth category you have already learned, it's the fathers of the church. Now, let's see what is scholasticism. Scholasticism is the collection of theological visions applied in medieval Christian theology as a result of interpretation of faith by Christian scholars. So it's a collection of theological works. Saint Anselm of Canterbury is the father of scholasticism. Summa Theologica of Saint Thomas Aquinas is a great contribution of scholasticism. So here you need to note certain points. What is scholasticism? It is a group or a collection of theological visions based on Christian faith. And Saint Anselm of Canterbury is known as the father of scholasticism. And Summa Theologica of Saint Thomas Aquinas is a great contribution of scholasticism. So please understand and please study that names. Now, Scholastic Theology. Scholastic Theology is a Christian theology developed by Saint Thomas Aquinas, who lived in 13th century. He developed this theology with the help of philosophy or Greek philosophers. This theology is difficult to understand. See, it's not easy. Since it's theology, it's not easy for the layman. But it has humanist approach and gives peace and hope to common people and reveals God's love towards them. Even though certain points are not clear to common people, it always spreads peace and love, and that anyone can understand. The fathers of the church always defended the Christian faith through their teachings, writings, and holy life. Like them, we should also try to understand the church. And that is the relevance of this chapter. Here, in the previous chapter, we learned about persecution. Here, we learned about the fathers of the church and protectors of faith. Now you know the meaning of this chapter, right? You know who are the fathers of the church? Who are the protectors of faith? Then you learned what is heresy, what is schism, and you also learned about some of the fathers of the church. But that is not all. We have very few in our textbook, but we have a lot of fathers of the church. You can read about them when you are free. It's very nice to read about their life. It's filled with God's love, peace, and also sufferings. And it's our duty to help the church grow. And that is all the relevance of this chapter. So that's all, children, for this class. We'll see you next week. Thank you.